Welcome back everyone to the third edition of our quarterly on credit video. Thanks for joining us again. In this edition, we will briefly talk about implied economic growth, recent fourth quarter earnings trends, drivers behind tight spreads, and insights about our dollar bond portfolio. I'm Alejandro Esteves Breton, the Chief Fixed Income Strategist.
Hi, I'm Marcelo Menusso, the Chief Credit Strategist.
Hi, I'm Rafael Gaião, Credit Strategist, and we represent Itaú Private Bank International.
Today, we will also have Vanessa Mueller from our local team, and she will close the video to talk about her thoughts about local Brazilian credit markets. To start off, a general view on markets. We think U.S. markets, including the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield, are incorporating very strong economic growth outlook, which is more optimistic than our soft landing scenario. We think this difference suggests bonds should perform well in both a soft landing and a recession scenario. In part, this justifies the positive outlook on U.S. Treasuries and overweight position we have in investment grade. Now moving on to earnings. Among blue chips, only 47 companies worried about recession, much less than the average over the last 5 and 10 years, and the lowest since the fourth quarter of 2021. In contrast, soft landing was cited more frequently, reaching the highest in 3 years. We believe these insights reflect the resilience of the U.S. consumer and the overall strength of the U.S. economy. In fact, earnings in the fourth quarter were very good, with 73% of companies reporting positive earnings surprises and 64% a positive revenue surprise. However, earnings guidance saw some deterioration, as 74 companies issued negative guidance, far more than 32 issuing positive guidance. We think this is consistent with some macro data releases, signaling some marginal slowdown in U.S. economic growth over the last month. Now, shifting to Marcelo, why do you think credit spreads are so low across sectors and tenors, and how do you think we should incorporate this into the portfolio?
Yeah, that's a very good point, Alejandro. Credit spreads are indeed pretty tight across the board. We think there are actually a few reasons that might justify it. Number one, yield levels are still pretty elevated. And when yields are high, the probabilities for positive fixed income returns, they go up. And investors, they feel more reluctant to sell their bonds when yields are higher. Number two, the supply, except for US investment grade, is still very timid. And then investors, they have no options. They have to go to the secondary market to buy their bonds, and that, of course, increases the pressure on prices. Then finally, the credit fundamentals for companies, they're in good shape, generally speaking. We attended a conference here in Miami, and we met with several companies. The outlook for most of the companies that we met with is pretty okay. But for even the companies that have a more challenging outlook, they have pretty good solid credit metrics and liquidity on their balance sheet to navigate a more challenging environment. Also, on this conference, we met with several investors from different parts of the world. And one thing that struck us was the positive investor sentiment. Usually when most people are bullish, it's perhaps a good idea for you to be a little bit more cautious. But for the time being, the momentum is pretty positive. And then in terms of portfolio positioning, we like a combination of investment grade and high yield. For investment grade, we're thinking the BBB rated companies and maturity is up to 10 years. In terms of yields, we're thinking around 5% for US investment grade and anywhere between 5.5% and 6% for emerging market investment grade. Now, when we talk high yield, then we like actually the BB credits. That's to control for credit risk. And we go for maturities up to 7 years. And in terms of yields, we're thinking anywhere between 5.5% and 7.5%. Now, Rafael, what are our preferences in terms of sectors, and how do you see the outlook and the earnings releases so far?
For companies in our coverage, the earnings season has been pretty much in line with you have already commented, Marcelo and Alejandro. Overall, earnings were better than market expectations and guidance less positive. In average, sales have grown from previous quarter, but for companies in basic materials and energy sectors, there was a contraction. Those sectors were the most impacted by commodity price and lower Chinese growth. Given the tight spreads and strong performance for most of the bonds since last October, we moved all of our investment grade sector calls to neutral. US Treasury yields have been the main source of performance and not credit risk. We see no catalyst in the short term to change this dynamic. On emerging market credits, we are still underweight in consumer non-cyclicals because of weaker economic growth and the fact that the sector is trading in line with other sectors. We still like financials, even though the premium to other sector has decreased since we started the call. And we have just closed our underweight in communication sector because credit metrics have improved for issuers under our coverage.
Thank you very much, Rafael. Thank you very much, Marcelo, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Now, Vanessa Müller, our colleague from Brazil, will share her views on the Brazilian local credit markets.
Olá, sou a Vanessa Müller e faço parte do time de Global Private Investment Specialists. Sou responsável por investimentos em crédito privado no Brasil. Este primeiro trimestre de 2024 foi marcado por mudanças em regras nos lastros dos certificados de recebível do agronegócio, os CRAs, os certificados de recebíveis imobiliários, os CRIs, além de alteração nas regras das LCIs e LCAs emitidas por bancos. De forma sucinta, o objetivo dessas medidas diz respeito a aspectos relacionados aos lastros elegíveis para as emissões desses tipos de ativos, assegurando que os referidos instrumentos sejam lastreados em operações compatíveis com as finalidades que justificaram a sua criação e contribuindo para o desenvolvimento sustentável do mercado de crédito. Na prática, o que isso significou e quais foram as mudanças de mercado observadas? Os CRIs, CRAs, LCIs e LCAs são isentos de imposto de renda para investidores pessoas físicas e alguns tipos de fundos de investimentos, assim como as debêntures de infraestrutura enquadradas na Lei 12.431. Nos últimos anos, esses títulos isentos ganharam bastante espaço junto ao público investidor. Adicionalmente, muitos fundos e carteiras geridas por profissionais foram criados, com composição principal de ativos isentos como os fundos imobiliários, os fiagros e fundos de infraestrutura. Em um primeiro momento, as novas medidas trouxeram uma perspectiva de diminuição de novas emissões. Aliado a isso, a captação em fundos de investimento de infraestrutura foi substancial neste começo de ano. Para se ter uma ideia, de janeiro a 5 de março já entraram mais de 8,5 bi de reais nesses fundos incentivados. Com isso, temos uma demanda muito forte para a alocação desses títulos com uma perspectiva de ofertas mais restrita. A principal consequência dessa pressão compradora foi a redução dos spreads no mercado secundário e nas taxas oferecidas às novas operações no mercado primário. Para se ter uma ideia, os spreads no mercado secundário saíram de patamares por volta de 1% acima da referência dos títulos públicos indexados à inflação, as NTNBs, para cerca de 0,5%. Existem papéis de crédito que já estão sendo negociados nos mesmos patamares das NTNBs, ou seja, sem um prêmio adicional, só levando em consideração a isenção fiscal para pessoas físicas. Acreditamos que essa situação ainda vai permanecer no curto e médio prazo. Mesmo assim, com os patamares das NTNBs em níveis relativamente atrativos e a vantagem da isenção fiscal, tais títulos continuam chamando a atenção. Só não podemos perder de vista que são ativos com risco de crédito sujeitos a desempenho das empresas e projetos, marcação a mercado referente à variação dos juros e outros movimentos de mercado. Por isso, sempre sugerimos carteiras diversificadas de acordo com seu perfil de investimento. Em caso de dúvidas, fique à vontade para entrar em contato com sua equipe de atendimento. Até a próxima edição.